In this video, I'll do an overview comparison between Intarsia, Mosaic, and stranded knitting. If you're a subscriber, welcome back. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm happy to have you here. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing. So Intarsia, Mosaic, and stranded knitting are all methods of knitting that use more than one color, but they differ. The techniques to produce the patterns differ between the three techniques. So here we have three examples, and they use Intarsia, Mosaic, and stranded knitting. So let's look at Intarsia first. These colors are pastel, so they are kind of blending together a little bit in this video, but there are four distinct colors in this swatch: blue, green, yellow, and pink. So Intarsia creates distinct blocks of color in your knitting. You use bobbins of each color, and only the yarn you need for each section is in use as you are knitting across. So as the knitting progresses, for example, in this swatch, the blue is worked, and as we get up to needing to join in the green, there's a bobbin of blue yarn being knitted across, and then you pick up a bobbin of green yarn and work the green stitches, and then drop that bobbin, and you've got another bobbin of blue stitches that you pick up and work over here. So once the green gets joined, there are three bobbins of yarn hanging off of your work, but you are only using one color at a time. So you have to lock the yarns around each other at the color changes in order to prevent holes. And you want your stitches to be open at the base. So when you weave your tails in later or when you are working your stitches across, you want to make sure the yarn travels in the direction it would travel if it was continued to be used, so that all of your stitches at the points and at color changes are open and untwisted at the base. I'll show you the back here then. These colors are twisted to lock around each other at the color changes. So you get these loops where the colors lock around each other and that prevents holes at the color change. Intarsia is typically worked flat, since that is the easiest way to work it, because all of the yarns, we're working from right to left, all of the yarns will be at the left edge of each section. Therefore, working flat, they will be where you need them to be. If you were working in the round, the yarn would not be at the right edge of the section where you need it to be. There are methods out there that allow you to work Intarsia in the round, however. So they do different things to get around the fact that the yarn isn't where it needs to be. Intarsia is usually worked in stockinette stitch, but there could be other textured stitches used while also using Intarsia. And Intarsia is best suited for when there are large sections of one color and the color is not needed evenly across the fabric. So I would not use stranding for this design, because the color, the green, is not needed all the way across the row. It's needed in one distinct block area. Argyle is a common motif that uses Intarsia to create the design. Stranded colorwork creates multi-color rows of knitting. Typically, 2 colors are used at a time, but sometimes 3 or more can be used in a single row. Both colors, or all colors, if more than 2 are used, are carried across the row as you are knitting. Usually, stranded colorwork is worked in the round, since that makes it easier to work. You don't have to have the wrong side facing you, where the pattern is less distinguishable and harder to tell what needs to happen. So usually stranded color work is worked in the round with the right side facing you at all times. It can be worked flat, however. You have to take care that your tension is not too loose or too tight, since the color not in use gets stranded across the row of stitches, thus the name, stranded colorwork. These floats could be too tight, which causes puckers in the right side of the fabric. They could also be too loose, which would cause uneven tension on the right side of the fabric and floppy floats on the wrong side of the fabric. Stranded colorwork tends to have less horizontal stretch than plain one color stockinette due to these floats, restricting the horizontal stretch. You can lock your floats if floats are very long. Note that I never lock my floats. I find that the tension and the look in the fabric that I get without locking my floats looks much better than locking the floats. Locking the floats can cause peek through on the right side and some divots where the floats are locked. Keep that in mind. But you can lock your floats if they are extremely long, or you can use ladder back jacquard to keep long floats more secure on the wrong side, and I have a video demonstrating that. I will link it above. Usually, stranded colorwork is worked on a base of stockinette stitch. It's all knits on the right side of the work, but you could find other textured stitches sprinkled in for stranded colorwork. Keep in mind, Fair Isle knitting is a subset of stranded colorwork knitting. There are certain rules to Fair Isle knitting that make it Fair Isle, traditional Fair Isle. And so that is a subset of stranded knitting. Stranded colorwork knitting is simply using 2 or more colors at a time across a row and stranding the unused colors. Stranded colorwork is best suited for designs that regularly use all of the colors all the way across the fabric. So the blue is present all across the horizontal width of the fabric. So this is a good candidate for stranded colorwork knitting. Mosaic knitting is a subset of slipped stitch patterns. Mosaic knitting uses slipped stitches to create the design, but there are certain rules to it. 2 colors are typically used, but more than 2 can be used. These 2 colors are usually highly contrasting. Now, these are not quite as highly contrasting as would be desired. This is a better example. The pattern shows up much better in the more highly contrasting colors. Only one color is in use at a time. So the unused yarn is not held in the hand, it is dropped. So there's no carrying the other yarn across the row. Mosaic knitting is commonly worked in garter-based fabric, as this example, but it can be worked in stockinette instead. The color pattern then is created by slipping stitches. Each color is in use for 2 rows, and those 2 rows are worked in the exact same pattern. The same stitches are worked on the second row as were worked before, and the same stitches are slipped on the second row as the row before. This carries the slipped stitch up 2 rows and brings that prior color up into the row with the new color. So you would join the purple yarn and work the purple stitches and slip all of the white stitches according to your chart. And then on the second row across, you follow what was just done, working the same stitches and slipping the same stitches that were slipped. So each pattern row, each what looks like one row of a pattern here, since we're working in garter, is actually 2 rows of knitting. So in the purple row, this would be a purple row here or right here. the white gets brought up through that purple row of knitting to bring the white up. Mosaic knitting can be worked flat or in the round. The designs are very geometric, so slipping the stitches creates these 90-degree angles, these very square shapes. So mosaic designs are all very geometric. Here's another example of mosaic knitting. So mosaic knitting is best suited for geometric designs that span the whole width of the fabric. Let me show you the wrong side of the work. So there are no floats here. Stitches are simply slipped to create the pattern on the right side. So again, we have Intarsia, we have stranded colorwork, and we have mosaic knitting. So that's a quick overview comparing the color knitting techniques of Intarsia, stranded colorwork, and mosaic knitting. Have you used one or more of these techniques before? Let me know in the comments below. I hope this was helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.